All right. Yes, I'm Jack Hafer. I'm back. I was asking my wife how long has it been, and I think it was November 12th. And so, did summer go by fast, or winter quick enough for you all? Winter, it's like spring. You got trees blooming, not fast enough. I know. So, hey, we're glad we're here. I got my assignment. We're in Matthew chapter 6, and so we're going to look at that and on the Sermon on the Mount. Is this the right clicker? I don't remember. Okay. Both of them do? Hi, Chad. How are you? Yeah, it's really working. So, does it not have the dongle in it, or? Try it now. Oh. Great, good. All right, well, let's have a word of prayer, then we'll begin. And Oliver, can you lead us, please?
Our great God, our Father, thank you so much for the love you have for us, and the way you've shown it to us in so many ways. Thank you for your word. We pray you be with Jack this morning as he opens your word, and that as we open it, that we may better understand your Son and strive to emulate him, be prepared to be at your feet at the judgment day with great anticipation. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Thank you. All right, so I'm sure everybody has certain disciplines in their life. How many people go to the gym on a regular basis? All right, that's a physical, yeah, that's me. That's a discipline, right? And not only it takes discipline to do it, but it's just a practice you have in your life for your well-being. What other kind of disciplines are there like that? Maybe diet or something like that. There's a discipline there. Does anyone do yoga and meditation or anything like that? Okay, wrong crowd here, so. Well, there's lots of disciplines. Well, there are spiritual disciplines as well, okay? And just coming to worship is a discipline, and we could talk about practicing them. When we're coming to the Sermon on the Mount, the Jews practiced 3 spiritual disciplines that Jesus is going to have to address in Matthew chapter 6. The Sermon on the Mount is just a spectacular discourse with Jesus with the Jews. And it's set off and premised by this verse that he uses in verse 20. Remember, he begins, "Blessed are the poor in spirit and those that are persecuted." That just seems totally opposite, right? Blessed, because who are the icons of righteousness in the Jewish people? Do you know? The scribes and the Pharisees. They knew the law, they taught the law, they dressed in robes, they took respectful greetings, and they were the epitome of what it means to be righteous. They prayed on the street corners, and everyone looked to them, and they told everyone how righteous they were too in various ways. So Jesus has this startling statement, which kind of is the premise of the whole Sermon on the Mount. Unless your righteousness surpasses, far exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you're not even going to make it to the kingdom of heaven. Forget it. Now, how do you think they received that if you're a common listener sitting on the grass listening to Jesus on this mountain where, well, it's the side of a hill where they're listening to him? How would they take that?
Totally shocked.
Well, no one's going to get to heaven because they're the epitome of what it means to be righteous. So Jesus then just starts to dismantle the righteousness of the Pharisees. He says, oh, you've heard you shouldn't murder. Well, if you're mad at someone, you wish they're dead, you've committed murder in your heart. Oh, you've heard you shouldn't commit adultery. You teach that. But if you're divorcing people just to marry someone else, you've committed adultery. And furthermore, if you look at someone and to lust in your heart, you have already what? Committed adultery. So just boom, 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 boom. He says, they're hypocrites. Then you start doing that, and you're like, oh, I guess we're going to talk about what true righteousness is. It comes from the heart, because the Old Testament, the old law was written on stone, and again, to become one of the chosen nation of Israel, what did you have to do if you were a person there? And there's a lot of answers you give, but the answer is you just had to be born. When you're born a Jew, you're also part of the chosen nation of Israel, right? God's special people. Did your heart have to be in it? No, because when you're born, you don't know anything about who God is. And so to be born into the kingdom of heaven, you got to be born again of the water and the Spirit. And God owns your heart, right? He wins your heart. And that's what Jesus is going to talk about, that true righteousness and worship and the spiritual discipline has to come from here, not just doing the practice and checklist type of religion, which they did. So that takes us as introduction to chapter 6, where we're going to look at the giving of alms, praying, and fasting. These are the three things that you see them exercising as spiritual disciplines in their day, and they ought to be as well for us. Remember Cornelius in Acts 10? Was he Jew or Gentile? Quick. All right, but he was a proselyte perhaps, because it says that he was a devout man who feared God with all his household, who gave many alms to the Jewish people. That's the first one, right? He gave gifts of charity for people that needed it, and then he prayed to God continually. It doesn't include the fasting part in here, but he practices himself these spiritual disciplines. Now, with that being said, we just want to look at them in the 30 minutes I have left. I was complaining to Oliver how it's tough to teach a class in some of this stuff in just 35 minutes, but we'll manage, okay? So, chapter 6, notice what he says in verse 1. Beware of practicing your righteousness before men, and what's the motive? To be noticed or seen by others. Otherwise, you're not going to have any reward with your fathers in heaven. And so that's the theme of this section. And it's hypocritical just to do it to be seen as though you're righteous, when true righteousness, you're doing it to be seen by God. All right? So he's going to give 3 examples in these spiritual disciplines. Verse 2, when you give alms, see that? Verse 5, when you pray. And then verse 16, whenever you fast. So these are things they did regularly and continually, and Jesus just deals with them and really just shoots them down, the hypocritical actions of the Pharisees. So, verse 2, when you give alms, now that's giving a gift of money to help others, and that's the purpose of it. Don't sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogue and in the streets, that they may be honored by men. Truly, are they rewarded? What does it say? Yeah, they got the reward, because who honors them? They're doing it to be seen by men, and they get that honor. Like, oh, look at those guys. And so would they literally sound a trumpet? Now, we know that often the alms box had a big horn, they say, that made out of brass, and you put the coins in it, and it'd rattle and go down. You'd have seen something like that? So you could hear it. Oh, you know, like chink, 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 chink. Then all of a sudden, what? Right? A lot of money. Like, everyone look. Oh, it's Pharisee Hezekiah, you know, and he's given a lot of money, right? Man, isn't he a great guy? Isn't he a loving guy? So, verse 3, when you give alms, Jesus says, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing, that your alms may be, I'll put the word given, in secret, right? And your Father who sees in secret, he will what? Did your Bible say reward or something else? Repay. That's it, that's repay. And that's what the idea of reward, it's going to give back. Because we're giving, but God's going to pay back. Now, that's amazing. So let's look at this, and we're going to see some pattern that all 3 of the disciplines will follow. But everything is going to have this idea of secret but seen. Secret from men, but seen by God, okay? And so we're trying to be seen by our Father in heaven. That's what's matters. So notice this is going to be the box that I'll show you the pattern. Here's what the scribes and Pharisees do. Here's what the disciples of Christ do, okay? And you're going to look at the person, the action, the motive, the reward, and then we have to ask about ourselves. So when we go to the next one, I'll join the Secret Service. We look at this example. The scribes and Pharisees, Jesus calls them hypocrites, doesn't he? Now, what's a hypocrite, literally? Yeah, it's a play actor. You're acting a role that you really aren't. That's what it means. It comes from the word to act on a play, in a theater. And so they actually sound a trumpet, and their motive is to be honored by men, and they get that. They get the esteem, like, oh, you're such a great guy. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But a disciple, if you want to be truly righteous, and their righteousness surpass that of the Pharisees, you're going to give in secret. Now, what does that mean, give in secret? No one can know that you've done it? Absolutely.
Sometimes anonymous giving is amazing.
Sometimes, yes. And you help someone, you're like, who helped her? Well, they chose to remain anonymous because they don't want any glory or credit. Now, we give, and the plate is passed. Are you all giving in secret when you do that? So have you violated this command? No. It's just the attitude of the heart, right? And especially in their day, you know, you're not making a big show of it. You just go in there and quietly and give the alms. And when you're doing something to help someone privately and personally, that it's not through the church, you don't make a big announcement. Oh, I helped someone, I paid their rent. I just want you to know that. Well, you're a great guy, you hypocrite. You know? That's what Jesus might say, right? So when it says give in secret, not let the right hand know what the left hand's doing, especially when we get to praying, you're supposed to go where? Pray where? We read this, in the closet. Well, that means no one can lead in a public prayer, right? So don't make these things mean too much. It's all about what? The attitude of your heart. Why you're giving. Their motive is not to help others. Their motive is to what? Help themselves with praise. Exactly. To say, everyone think, oh, what a good boy you are, right? So there's a difference. Now, does God see everything you do when it comes to giving, praying, and fasting? Yeah. Whether anybody else sees it or not, and we're more interested in his reward, what he thinks of us, than anybody else. And that should be our motivation. See what motivates the two different people? One is recognition by others. The other one's recognition by God. That's true discipleship. So we look at that. Is that easy? Yeah. Now, when it comes to myself, I want you to notice in each of these texts, it says, when you give, when you pray, and when you fast. It does not say, going in reverse, if you fast, or if you pray, or if you give. What is understood that they're all doing? Giving, praying, and fasting. So when it comes to me, he said, hey, this is no problem with me. I don't fall in this because I don't give to anybody. So I don't do it with a bad motive because I just don't give. He's not saying if you give, it says what? When. Now again, they're talking to Jews. That was part of their spiritual discipline, but that's one that as Christians we should incorporate in our life because Jesus himself said it's more blessed to give than to receive. And really, the true love of God is when we love others more than ourselves. And we do give. And the money that God has given us, we use to support our own family. Is that giving? And then out of the excess to help support others. We aren't allowed to earn income for ourselves. It's for others. That's generally the rule, okay? And so it's interesting. Well, I don't have a problem here because I don't give. Well, that is a problem. Because you're not doing anything. And so Christians are givers. They're helping people even sacrificially when it hurts. Remember in Acts chapter well, it starts in 2, but mostly in 4, we see that the early church, there were a lot of needy people. What were people doing? Selling their properties, laying the money at the apostles' feet to help everyone who is in need. That's sacrificial. Does God notice that? And he said, I'm going to repay you. Now, there's rewards in heaven. We're going to talk about that at the worship hour. But also, he'll give you more seed to help others. In other words, more money. He said, I can trust this guy, this person. They're not going to use it for themselves. They're going to use it for others. Their time, their money, their abilities. I'm going to give them more opportunities because here's someone that's working for me. All right, any questions about that one? All right, so everyone's going to follow the same principle, all right? So now in verse 5, when you pray, and again, it's not if you pray. Now, I know we're all praying people, but I know that if we ask the question honestly and had you raise hands, who feels like they pray enough? There'd probably no one say, yeah, that's me. Now, if you were a scribe or Pharisee, you'd probably go, yeah, I hate to admit it, but I pray too much. You know, they might say that, right? Because they're looking for the reward of men. All right. So, but here he says, it's not like the hypocrites. Isn't that sharp words? Because are they listening to this lesson as well? No wonder they killed Jesus. Because he pulled off the disguise that they were wearing as they're being so self-righteous and showed their true inner person. And they didn't like that. And also because they didn't think Jesus fit their concept of the Messiah. They hated this man, didn't they? Because he revealed who they really were. And they had nothing to say about it. So here was praying. They love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners so they may be seen by men. Now, not having been there, but reading what I can and seeing what happens today. I remember our first flight, and Steve was on it to Israel. During the hours of prayer, the people that are going to Israel that live there, Jewish people, they go up in front and put on all their things around their head, the frontals, and they start praying. And you couldn't help but notice them because they grouped. Do you remember that? Yeah. And huh?
You couldn't get back to the bathroom.
I know, because they're all huddled and just doing their praying. And he said, well, isn't that wonderful? They're praying to God. Well, that's what we see happening here. They're praying to God, but they're praying to be seen. So this is kind of tough because if you're a praying person and you practice that as a spiritual discipline, ideally no one would know that you're a praying person and that you practice it as a spiritual discipline. Your life is filled with prayer. But on the other hand, if they got to know you and you were friends, you would find out they were. Because there would be comments, yeah, I was praying while I was going down the road. Or I get up every morning, you'll find out somehow they spend the first half hour of their day in prayer. Because that's a discipline, right? You go to the club for an hour, there's a practice like a half hour every day, at certain times, whatever it is, I'm praying to God. It's how I start my day. It's how I finish my day. So people will know it. So it's not like it's so secret that no one knows, but it's the motive, right? I'm not doing it to be honored by one another. I just want to talk and communicate to my God because I need his blessings, his presence in my life. So that's what's happening here, right? They get the reward because everyone thinks they're great, right? And we could do a lesson here on praying publicly too, because sometimes public prayers are uttered in such a way to help people say, oh, that was a beautiful prayer. Now, if you're praying from the heart, it's always going to be beautiful. I don't care what words you use. But sometimes people pray, and I'm never going to point anyone out because that's judging, right? That's going to be the lesson this afternoon, don't judge. But they're just saying things. They've knit together these beautiful phrases because they know they sound beautiful, but you wonder, is their heart ever in it? It's possible to fall into that trap. That's all I'm saying. Praying to be heard by one another. Okay? So he goes to an extreme. When you pray, go in your inner room, close your door, and pray to your fathers in secret. That's why we get this idea of praying in the closet, right? I think the King James says that. Do you ever want to watch the movie, The War Room? Yeah, it's kind of very interesting. But this lady, she had actually her room, and she went in there and prayed, and she had pictures of people she's praying for and passages, and it showed the events that took place because of her prayer. It was very powerful, and I think it speaks to the reality of what can happen if we are just like praying this way. Now, again, does that mean you can never be prayed and people seeing you? No. Do you all pray when you eat a meal at a restaurant? Are people seeing you? So the choice is, man, I don't want to violate this command, so I can't thank God for the food that I'm about to eat because people see me. Or you can just put a shelter around you and then take it down afterwards. No, you're going to pray, but the point is the motive, right? You don't go, excuse me, it's kind of noisy in here. We're going to pray at our table. And so you have everyone in the restaurant be quiet for a little while. Now we're going to pray, thank you, thank you. And then you pray aloud so everyone hears you. That would be what they're doing. They actually prayed in the street corners. They prayed to be seen. Now, Luke 18, remember there was a Pharisee, and he's paired up with who? Do you remember that? Huh? Yeah, a tax gatherer, a sinner. And the Pharisee looks up to God. I'm glad, God, I'm not like this guy, right? And they were praying to be seen. People noticed that. They heard it. That's what he says. You pray in secret, and your Father who sees in secret, he's going to reward you. They had 3 traditional days of prayer, times of prayer every day. That's why I'm saying this is a spiritual discipline. It was part of their daily routine where, yes, they fed themselves. Yes, they worked. They might have worked out, but they worked out their spiritual life too, their soul, their spiritual exercise, if you would. And so it was the morning prayer at dawn, the noon prayer at afternoon, that some say about 3 p.m., the evening prayer. And so everyone stopped and prayed. Well, that's quite a spiritual discipline, isn't it? That you just stop in the middle of your day and pray. Could you do that? Could we? I mean, even if you go to work, you have lunchtime, right? I know some people that go out in their car and eat their lunch and read their Bible and pray every lunch. It's just a part of their routine. And of course, we were taught by our parents, my parents, that say your prayers before you go to bed. And hopefully that develops into more than just I lay myself down to sleep, Father. You know how we do that. It's more of an extended prayer. But I would encourage you, 3 times a day, make it part of your spiritual discipline, your spiritual routine. Because he's the only one that really matters, isn't it? Having his relationship with him and approval. So, not if you pray, but when. So when we look at the chart again, we know they're hypocrites because it's all to be seen by men. And we could care less about that. We don't care if they do. But we're praying to be heard by our Father. Because we're looking for his blessings, his rewards. We could care less about this. And so, how many people, again, no show of hands, you feel your prayer life's awkward. You just don't know what to say or how to say it. That's me often. And that's good because when you're worried about what to say and how to say so it comes out nicely, you're on this side. But when you just want to talk to God, and sometimes it's groanings, and the Spirit intercedes for our groanings, right? Romans chapter 8. Words you can't even find the words for. The Spirit says, God, this is what he's trying to say. That's his side, isn't it? So if you feel awkward and you struggle in your prayer, that's fine because you're over here. God hears you, and he does understand. Just keep going to him. And no matter how awkward it sounds. All right, any thoughts about this one? Okay, this one is the one I'm sure, fasting, I can nail most of you, you don't do it. When's the last time you heard a sermon about fasting?
Last year.
Did you really? Who did that?
I don't remember, I just remember about that.
You're over 70, right?
Yes.
It could have been 5 years ago, because I know what happens when you remember. I'm sorry. That's terrible.
It's okay, I'll get back.
Yeah, I know you will. As we get older, Oliver had a birthday. He's really getting old. He said he'd call me back on his birthday, but he forgot because he knew I was going to tease him about getting old, and I was. But yeah, sorry, Rex. I'm just having fun. All right. I'm going to skip the Lord's Prayer. It's not the Lord's Prayer is not pray this prayer. It's a template, if you would. Pray in this manner. We're always adoring God. We're praying for his will to be done, then our own self, and then we're closed with a prayer. It's just a pattern, and that'd be a lesson in itself. It's really a beautiful thing. But here's where I want to spend the rest of our time, 9 minutes. Whenever you fast. Again, I'm going to repeat. He doesn't say if you fast. It's when you fast. They fasted on Mondays and Thursdays as a regular discipline, the Jewish people. It wasn't if, it was a when. They did. It's just what they did. Fasting is talked about in the Bible so much when you start looking at it. Moses fasted. He had a lot of reasons to. You remember when Esther wanted to save her people from annihilation, she had to go into the king, and the king hadn't asked for her for a while because maybe she had some falling out. He said, man, I'm afraid if I go in there and he didn't accept me, I'm going to lose my life, right? Because you don't walk in uninvited. So what did she ask? All the people of Israel to fast and pray. Even we got the heathen people. When Jonah went to Nineveh and said, God's going to destroy you, and then got up the hill waiting for it to happen, what did the king do? He ordered a fast that extended even to the animals. Fasting and repenting, that perhaps God will relent and change his mind. And he did. And of course, Jonah got all upset because he hated the Gentiles. That's a whole nother story. All right? But they were fasting. When they appointed elders in Acts 14, after fasting and praying, they appointed elders by laying hands on them. When they sent out Barnabas and Paul on the first missionary journey in Acts 13, you know what they did? After they fasted, it was a regular routine. Anything important, anything there's trauma, anytime there was sin and you had to repent and you chose to self-afflict yourself by going without food so you could concentrate on the spiritual. Because in those moments when there's a death, you don't feel like eating, you feel like praying. And so fasting was always associated with calling upon the Lord. But the Bible's full of it. And it's something we don't talk about enough. Fasting. It's defined as voluntarily going without food, and sometimes food and water. That's a total fast. There's just a water-only fast. You just drink fluids, but you don't eat anything. But there's all sorts of kind of fasts. There's a partial fast. There's for a 12-hour fast. And of course, you know breakfast is a breaking your fast, because some of us don't get up in the middle of the night and eat ice cream. We can't go through the whole night without eating. But most of us, we sleep without eating. That's a fast. It's not a voluntary one. It's kind of imposed upon you. But breakfast is breaking your fast, isn't it? So they did it. And so the Jews, the hypocrites, when they fasted, even though it's a day fast, they neglected their appearance. And from what Jesus says to do, wash your face and put on clean clothes and all that, we get the idea they were doing the opposite. They just let themselves go. Like, I have a friend that drops in every now and then in the morning, and it's Richard. Like, Richard, it's 7 o'clock. What are you doing here? And he said, let's go over some coffee, good buddy. And that's the way he talks. And I says, your hair is a mess, because I just got up, And he's always got perfect hair, and he's proud of it. But so I say all that. Can you tell when someone has neglected their appearance? And they look like disheveled, and they're just, their clothes. And they do that, so everyone would go, oh, Oliver, he's fasting. Isn't that beautiful? He's fasting before God. Don't bother him. But isn't that great? You can just tell by the way their appearance and their clothes, and maybe they're sitting on the corner and praying. And he said they're doing it to be noticed by men. And you couldn't help but notice them. He said, yep, they get the reward. People think they're all that. There's something else. He says, when you fast, not if, again, you wash your face. You anoint yourself. And you wear clean clothes, so your fasting will not be noticed by men. Well, sometimes this actually has happened. Hey, you want to go out to get a bite to eat? No, that's all right. Well, come on, no, it'd be fine. And they finally say, I'm fasting today. Oh. They didn't want to say anything, but I kept pushing. They go, I'm fasting. Oh, good for you. And you wouldn't know, and you shouldn't know, because it's between you and God. And so I'd encourage you, put that into your spiritual discipline. Fast 1 day a week. Start with that. It doesn't have to be all day. It could be morning till and take the evening meal. Fast, eat that. Then. And if it's hard, it's challenging, because it's amazing how much your stomach talks to you. But every time it talks to you and says, I want food, you go, that's your cue. I've got to go talk to God. And rather than go eat, you go pray. It's amazing how that can change your life. First, you realize how much you think about food and how little you think about God. And when you're fasting, that slowly starts to reverse itself. And it's probably healthy too. There's health benefits. But I'm going to put my disclaimer before anyone fasts here. Talk to your doctor and to make sure you get health, because there are some challenges, with fasting, especially if you have some disease condition or some ailments, right? But everyone can fast. They did. So it's interesting. So one person calls it a hunger for God. I'm choosing not to eat because I'm just hungry for God, especially in this moment in my life. There's something going on that I have to fast. I'll just say this. We have 3 minutes. Someone asked about our building. We finally moved in in December. And I forgot. I haven't been back since we did all this. And we got in on a Saturday, and the workers really made everything possible. We got a temporary occupancy permit just so we could meet on Saturday and then worship the first time on the next Sunday. But we called for the whole congregation to fast all day Saturday. And it was amazing how many people I talked to, without exception, everyone, yeah, I fasted. Yeah, I've been fasting. Older people, younger people. And then we had a chart where people pull off little tabs to make sure every half hour of the day someone was praying. And there was, every time slot was taken, sometimes doubled up, because we wanted people praying all day long and fasting, just thanking God and for this new opportunity and new beginning for this church there in Dallas. And then, of course, we broke our fast with a big potluck. But no, we had a devotional, just members only, coming in the building, and we prayed to God and sang, toured the building. And I was amazed how many people in some are continuing to fast. We can do it. You ought to think about it. And so when you look at it, our chart, we'll finish there. Again, they did it twice a week, and here's the chart. They were hypocrites because they neglected themselves. The righteous people are just going to be normal. You won't know it, because they want to be noticed by men, and we could care less about that. In fact, the people that you respect the most, they're embarrassed when you know they're fasting or they're praying. They're uncomfortable. They don't like the attention, right? But they do want to be noticed by God, because that's who they're doing. They're reaching out to God. And you notice that some people love to be seen. Other people are very uncomfortable with it because it's personal, right? course, they're going to get the reward both sides. We want just rewards from God. And so again, myself, no problem. I don't have any problem. I must be righteous. I never fast. No, that's not a good answer, is it? It's not a good answer. And so it's something we can talk about later. So the reason is, and we're going to finish here, and this will be our lesson at the worship hour, is because it's just a matter of our priority. Are we trying to store up treasures in heaven or treasures on this earth? And that was the problem with these self-righteous people that Jesus said, your righteousness has to surpass theirs. They're looking for treasures on this earth and honor and respect from men rather from God. And it's all about that type of spiritual dynamic. All right.